We're having a catch-up in the veg garden today on Pots and Trowels, and that's brought to you with the support of King Seeds and Cobra Garden. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. Well, beautiful spring day for a change, and I'm here in the vegetable garden and it's the beginning of April, feels very spring-like. So I'm going to get started with sowing and planting out. And it's the perfect time to do it. April, May and June are probably the main months when we do our vegetable growing and getting the seeds in. I've never been one for starting early. I know some people like to get in there and be the first, but I always think there are no prizes for being the first person to sow your veg seed. The real prize is for those that get the lovely vegetables at the end of the day. So it's always better to wait a little bit and things will catch up. Ground conditions are perfect now. So I'm going to do some work, and this is the veg plot that we laid out last year. We've got the 4 raised beds and 3 of those beds are on a rotation system. One of them, which is the one just over there behind me, that one is sort of the permanent bed. It's got asparagus in there which isn't showing yet, but then we plant some salads in there and we've got courgettes to go in there. So I treat that one separately, but the one I'm sitting on, this one here and the one just there, are the 3-bed rotation, and they basically move around 1 plot each year, so it's 3 years before you get back to the start. And the reason for that is it helps to stop depletion of nutrients, it stops the build-up of pests and diseases in the soil that can affect certain crops. So this one behind me, this bed here, was last year, it was all the cabbages, the cauliflower, the Brussels, the kale, the brassica family. So we've harvested the last cabbage only this week. I've just forked it over very roughly, and this is going to be the bed where we grow our root crops this year. And the reason for that is because the cabbage roots are good at getting down, breaking up the soil. So it's great now that we put the roots in because they can grow into that friable soil. So what I will be doing over the next week or so is I'm going to be sowing things like our carrots and the beetroot, different varieties of carrot and parsnips directly into the soil in drills. So I'm not going to be starting them off in modules. These don't need any root disturbance. So we'll rake the soil finely, sow them thinly, and they will grow in situ where they've been sown. And I've actually put a couple of cloches on here when it was very wet about a fortnight ago, just to help dry up the soil so we can do some early sowing. That's a good way to warm the soil up. Going in this bed as well, because it's roots, I'm going to put our early potatoes in there as well, and these are some, this is a variety called Swift that I've been starting off. This is a process called chitting, and we've got videos on our YouTube channel if you want to see how we chit and plant potatoes. And chitting is when these little shoots grow. So these have started into growth, so these are perfect for putting out in the garden now. Plant them about 3 inches deep, a foot apart, and we'll have lovely new potatoes in 13 weeks' time. So bed number 2 here last year had onions and the legumes. So we had onions in there, we had garlic in there, and the last of the leeks, as you can see, I think there's 2 or 3 leeks left there, which will probably be turned into soup by Jill very soon. And we also had some dwarf French beans and some broad beans. So this bed now is going to go over there, and what will go in here are the brassicas that were there. Hop and skip into this bed. So this one will be planted with all the lovely brassicas, which I've started off in modules in the greenhouse, and we'll have young plants to go out in a matter of weeks' time. And then the 3rd bed on the rotation system is this one. And this last year had the carrots and the beetroot in there and the potatoes, which is obviously over there now. So this one is now going to be the onion bed this year. And we've already got the garlic growing. We put this in, this is the elephant garlic here, which is doing very well, nice strong plants, and then an almost standard garlic there. So these were planted back in the autumn, and they've overwintered and done very well despite it being so wet. So what I'm going to do today, 2 things in here. One is we're going to put in some onions, and I'm going to grow onions from what we call onion sets. And this is the perfect time to put them in because, as I said, the ground is nice and warm. In fact, I've got my little thermometer just here, a soil thermometer, and it's probably too small for you to see, but it's telling me that the soil temperature is about 7 or 8 degrees centigrade. So that is a sort of 45, 48 Fahrenheit, something like that, which is ideal conditions. So I know we're okay. So what I've got here are my onion sets, little miniature onions that we can plant out. These will grow and form full-size onions by late summer. So I've prepared the ground, I've worked in some of our compost, lightly tickled it over with a fork, not deep digging, it's not no dig my method of growing, but it's what I call minimal cultivation. So I just literally just fork it just a little bit to get any weeds out and just break up any layers of compaction. And then I always like it to be fairly level. I like the vegetable garden to look neat. So I'm just giving that a very light rake. What I'm also going to do is just sprinkle just a little bit of fertilizer along where these are going to be. This is bloodfish and bone, which is a natural organic fertilizer. Although it's got compost in, that won't feed the plants right the way through the summer. So that just gives that extra little bit of a boost of all the nutrients they need, and just work that into the surface very gently. And then we can plant. And planting is very simple. Now, what I don't want to do is compress this soil too much. So what I have here is an old scaffolding board that I can put over there. If these beds were narrow, I could do it from the side, but I've made them bigger, so I'm struggling to do that. My little planting board in there, which is just so I can gauge where the onions are going to be. And then the way I plant them is very simple. I like to use a trowel. Some people just push them into the ground, but I'm going to plant these about 3 to 4 inches apart, so 7.5 to 10 centimetres. So we're going to put one there. The reason I like a trowel is I like to put them down into the soil and then just firm them in a little bit. If you push them in directly, it compresses the soil at the bottom, and I think that makes it a little bit harder to root. So these are 2 inches, so about every 3 or 4 inches. It's not an exact science. And I'm just going to plant them, obviously with the rooty end down, so that they are just poking there. We can just see the top of that bulb there, and we just need to firm them in. If we don't firm them in, especially if they've got a little piece of the old foliage on like that, what can happen is the blackbirds come and peck them out. So you put them in the ground and the blackbirds think it's a worm and they pull them up like that. So just give them that little bit of a firm, and we're just going to space those along the row as easy as that. No need to water because there's plenty of moisture down there. I can feel that lovely moisture in the soil, so that will encourage the roots to go down and they'll grow away without any problem. So one row and then another row about 30 centimetres apart. A couple of rows will give us loads of onions for later on in late summer. So I will do those, and then it will also have leeks in here. So the leeks will go in much later, probably June before they go in. But then at that end of the bed, what I want to do is to plant some dwarf French beans, and we're also going to put in some of these broad beans. Now this is a variety called the Sutton. These were sown in February in the cold greenhouse in these plug trays like this. Had a good germination, just a couple of misses on that one, but some of them have got 100%. Interesting on this one, look, we've got these lovely stocky plants, and the Sutton is naturally a dwarf plant, will only grow to about 30-35 centimetres tall. So it's great for containers, raised beds, or somewhere where it's a bit windy. But have you noticed the one plant in there has turned out yellow? It's got no chlorophyll in the leaf at all. It occasionally happens with plants that it just sort of creates those abnormalities like that. I'm not going to plant that one because it won't grow particularly well. It's got no chlorophyll, it's going to be weak. So what I'm going to do here is just plant some of these out, just give them a little squeeze, and let's see what they've got. A really healthy root system in there. So I'm just going to space them apart. Now, because this is a dwarf variety, we can plant them quite close together. And I'll do a staggered double row. So that should be enough along the front there. So I don't really need that. Take that out of the way because it's hiding them. So just the trowel. I would have put a bit of fertiliser down and I've forgotten to do it, so I'll do it afterwards. So a little bit of fertiliser, And all I'm doing is literally digging a hole, putting them in just more or less the same depth that they've been growing, and always firm them in. We don't want them loose because otherwise the soil dries out and they don't establish very well. So that one in there, we've got room for one more. So we just pop that one out there, pop that into there. And then what I'll do, I'll follow on with another row and just stagger them in between. So we get almost a block of broad beans. So that's going to keep me busy for a little while longer. If you haven't started off broad beans and you want some, again, there's still time. You know, this was the packet I'd got, and there's still time to sow them because we put them in February, and you can sow these right through until the end of April, even into May. And we could just now sow these directly into the soil, spacing them a little bit closer than I put the plants, just to allow for the odd miss, and you'll get some beans a little bit later on in the season. So bags to do in the garden, and get your seed, get your young plants, get started, and then you can enjoy tasty veg at the end of the summer. And don't forget, if the weather is warm and dry after you've planted them, just give them a drop of water from a watering can just to settle them in and keep them growing. Next time we're going to be doing some lawn maintenance, so we'll see you then. Bye.